So some of this you've done before. The only part of this that is Math 3 is going to be adding in functions that are a little bit more difficult, and then having notation that is a little bit more advanced than what you've seen. So I'm going to start off kind of with an example of what you've probably seen in the past, and then we're going to put a Math 3 spin on it. So in the past, you might have seen something like y equals 3x plus 5. And then they might have said something like, find y when x equals 2. Find y when x equals 2. So if they said that, what would you guys do? Yeah, plug 2 in for x. So you would say y equals 3 times 2 plus 5. And then you could plug that straight into a calculator, or if you're comfortable with order of operations, then you would know that multiplication happens first. So you would do 3 times 2 first, and then you would add the 5 to it. But your calculator can do all of those operations for you at once, and your calculator would say, okay, that's just 11. So y equals 11. So if we were to take this, we could say y equals 11 is one answer, but this would give us the point to 11. 2 for the x coordinate, 11 for the y coordinate. So if we were to think in terms of numbers that we could graph, this would be what we could graph. Okay. So the Math 3 version of this says we're no longer going to have y equals equations. We're now going to do problems with f of x equations. So here's the Math 3 version. They would say f of x equals 3x plus 5. And instead of saying find y when x equals 2, they would just say find f of 2. So if you look, you can see that the 2 is in the same spot as the x was. So this is called function notation. That's why it's got an F, function notation. So when you see this, f of 2, you say, oh, the 2 is in the spot where the x was, so they must want me to plug it in for x. So we'd say f of 2 equals 3 times 2 plus 5. And then we'd say, okay, f of 2 equals 11. So with this notation, you don't ever have to write the point down, because when you write the notation, you can see the x coordinate and the y coordinate in the notation. So it wouldn't be like y equals 11 and then you wonder, oh, what x did they put in? You don't have to wonder because you can see it in the answer. F of 2 equals 11. You can see both points in the answer, the x coordinate and the y coordinate. So here, the notation that we're going to use, notation for functions, we use f of x, sometimes they use g of x. So to read it out loud, we literally say f of x. F of x is what you say out loud. If you want to get really fancy and say what it actually means, it actually means a function in terms of x. That's what the F is for, a function in terms of x. And then sometimes you're talking about more than one function, and if that is the case, then we'll use f of x, and we'll use g of x, and we'll use h of x, and we'll use k of x, and we'll use l of x. We start to use different letters, and it's kind of like giving each of the equations a different name so that we can tell them apart easily. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and try a few of these. So we're going to practice. The instructions might say something like evaluate each of the following. And when something tells you to evaluate, typically they mean plug something in and get a number answer at the end. That's typically what is meant by that. And I'm going to go ahead and give you a couple different functions. We're going to name them different names. So the first one is going to be f of x, and that's going to be 3x minus 7. The second one is going to be g of x, and that's going to be x squared minus x. The third one is going to be h of x, and that's going to be negative x to the third. And then the fourth one is going to be m of x, and that's going to be negative absolute value of x plus 1. So we're going to be doing examples using these 4 functions. Okay, so for our first example, we're going to find g of negative 4. Find g of negative 4. And when you first start these, it can be easiest to do them if you have a color to work with. So if you want to pause for a minute and go grab a color to write with, we're probably going to use 2. Let's use 2 colors. So make sure you have at least 2 colors to write with. I need to go grab. I need to grab a second one. Everyone getting 2 colors to write with? Okay, so g of negative 4. So what I'm going to write down first is I'm going to say g of x, and I'm just going to write down the function for g of x. So g of x is x squared minus x. And then I'm going to take my color and I'm going to put it over the x's. Now I know that each place that I put that color needs to have a parenthesis because that's where I'm going to be plugging something in. So there's going to be something there, something there, something there. So see how I took where my colors were and I replaced them with the parentheses? Okay. And so now I'm going to go back in with my color and I'm going to make sure that for every single x that I now have a negative 4. So negative 4 squared minus negative 4. Negative 4 squared minus negative 4. And now I can type it in just to see what the answer is. So negative 4 squared minus negative 4. And you can see I'm just typing it in exactly the way it looks. Negative 4 squared minus negative 4. And the way that I read it out loud is exactly the way I typed it. So negative 4 squared minus negative 4. I'm making sure that anytime out loud I said negative, I'm using this button right here. Anytime I said minus, I'm using this button right here. All right, and what answer do you guys get? If you type it in, what answer do you guys get? 20. We get 20. Okay, so g of negative 4 equals 20. So if we were to graph this on a coordinate axis, we would have an x coordinate of negative 4, a y coordinate of 20. Negative 4, comma 20. Okay, let's try another one. Find h of negative 2. So h of x is negative x to the third. So I'm going to take a color, and I'm going to put that in for x. And then where my x's were, I'm going to put parentheses. And now where my parentheses are, I can go back and put a negative 2. So negative 2, negative 2. So I have the negative version of negative 2 cubed. And I can do the order of operations if I'm comfortable with that, or I can just type it in my calculator. So the negative version of negative 2 cubed is what? Positive 8. So h of negative 2 is 8. Are we comfortable with those so far? We're good so far? Can I make it more difficult? Slightly? Just slightly? Okay, so now we're going to do one where we start with this, but we're going to put a number in front of it. So this is example 3. We're going to find 2 times m of negative 1. So I'm going to ignore the 2 to start with because I think these problems get hard enough on their own. So I'm going to start with m. I'm just going to find m of x. So I'm going to write m of x down. M of x is negative absolute value of x plus 1. M of x is negative absolute value of x plus 1, okay? And I'm going to take my color, and I'm going to cover the x's, okay? And now I'm going to go back. I'm going to put parentheses where the x's were. Is everybody doing okay with putting their parentheses in? And then what number are we putting in the parentheses? Negative 1. So now I just have to type that in the calculator. So I have the negative version of absolute value of negative 1 plus 1. And how do I get an absolute value on my screen? Math, go over to number, and it's the first one. Okay? Negative 1 plus 1. So everyone see how I always, whatever I typed or whatever I wrote on the paper, that's what I'm typing on my screen every time? Because your calculator can handle whatever it is that you wrote on your paper. Okay, and then when you guys type that, what do you get? Okay, so I got m of negative 1 equals 0. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that part where I take the 2 and I put the 2 in front of it. I just have to put a 2 in front of it. So it's 2 times m of negative 1. So now I'm going to do 2 times m of negative 1. So I'm going to do 2 times the answer that I just got. So what is 2 times 0? It's just 0. So 2 times m of negative 1 in this case is boring because it's still the same answer. Okay, can I make it even more difficult than that for our last example? Yes? No? Yes? So for this one, we're going to do 3 times f of 0, and then we're going to subtract off m of negative 6, okay? We're going to do multiple things, okay? So I'm going to split this paper in two. Over here, we're going to do f of 0. Over here, we're going to do m of negative 6. Okay, so for f of x, I have to write down 3x minus 7. So let me go ahead and do that. F of x, I have to write down 3x minus 7. M of x is negative absolute value of x plus 1. Okay, so what should I do right here? How do I always start? Take my color. Put my color for my x's. Then what do I do? That's where my parentheses go. And then what number am I putting in there? 0. And if I were to read this out loud, I would say 3 times 0 minus 7. 3 times 0 minus 7. So I'm going to make sure that when I type it, I type 3 times 0 minus 7. So I'm using the minus button. And then what do you guys get? Negative 7. Okay. So f of 0 equals negative 7. Okay. Over here, let's do the same thing. So we've got parentheses plus 1. And then what number are we plugging into our parentheses? So I hit math, go over to number, option number 1. So negative absolute value of negative 6 plus 1. And I get negative 5. Okay, so the problem says 3 times f of 0 minus m of negative 6. So what we need to do is we need to figure out what 3 times f of 0 is. So 3 times f of 0, 3 times f of 0. What is 3 times f of 0? Three times negative 7. Negative 21. Okay. So now we have 3 times f of 0, so negative 21, minus m of negative 6. Three times f of 0 minus m of negative 6. What happens? What do we get? How'd you guys do with your test? Are you done or done for today? Done for today. Okay. All right. Cadence, would you mind picking up all the tests for me from the people coming back? The power. The power you have. All right. Let me hand out the practice assignments for those of you who are here. So on this, you guys are going to do 1 through 8. 1 through 8. Did you guys make sure you brought your calculators back?